We're going to wait for more people to attend. Looks like we still have some folks joining. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us for a little bit. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes, waiting for some additional folks to join. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming to our Wowza webinar today. We're going to be covering the live broadcasting workflow, so capture, encode, and go live. Today we have myself, Amara Graham, as the moderator. I'm the Director of Developer Relations here at Wowza. We also have Corey Behnke from Live X and Anthony Lazaro, our Senior Director of Product at Wowza. I'm going to cover a little bit of housekeeping here quick. We have a Q&A item that you can use throughout the webinar. We will be asking some questions in the middle of the webinar if they are relevant to the agenda topic that we're covering. If not, we'll kind of have saved those items for the end where we can talk a little bit more generically. We also have some folks that are joining us from our tech support who will be able to answer some of those questions, again, that might be outside of the agenda topics and more in their wheelhouse throughout this webinar. The other housekeeping item that I wanted to cover is we are streaming live on a whole bunch of socials. So we are live on Wowza Facebook, Wowza YouTube, Live X Facebook, and Live X YouTube. So you can catch us there as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Corey. Give us a little bit more information about who you are and what is Live X.
Thanks, Amara. Hey, everybody. I've got the clicker here, so I'll take you through how we, who we are at Live X and what we do. I'm here at our remote facility. So we are a live production, streaming, and broadcast company based here in New York City. Currently, we're operating as an essential service, providing support for news media clients like ABC, and also for Axios. I'll show you some of those clients we're doing remotes with. Again, if you have any questions in the chat, we're going to do a little free-for-all after and maybe in between. So here's kind of a look at what we used to do. Well, we still do it, but in this crisis, it's a little different. So you can see experiential, live streaming. We have a 4K mobile unit, studio production in our studio here, custom applications that I've worked with Wowza for a long time on, graphics engine, system integrations. We built a lot of people's studios, post-production, and then their transmission and distribution, which is our remote production, which is pretty much 100% of our business right now. And we use Wowza for a ton of stuff that I'm not going to talk about, meaning we use Wowza for our LiveX platform. We use Wowza for a ton of stuff, and we'll go over some of that. So the first thing we were going to start with was remote contribution solutions. That's kind of what everybody I feel like is here for, as far as, you know, what are people using right now? What are you using in your workflows? What are some ways that you can provide better services for your clients and people out there during this crisis? So I just wanted to start with the old school way that we still can do, that we don't do that much, but it's old school. So here's our master control room. You know, here's our mobile unit. There's a stadium, there's satellite, there's a fiber circuit coming satellite to our facility. We still have this. And this is a old school, but very traditional, very robust way to deliver services. So here's an example of a satellite uplink and encode. We were taking Joe Biden's first campaign appearance before he announced his candidacy. We sent a truck to Philadelphia. It came back to us. We encoded with a Wowza Clearcaster, encoded to Facebook and YouTube, satellite uplink, fiber transmission to us. Here you go. That's a classic use case. Not what anybody here is here for. I just wanted to kind of touch on that to be like, that's like the classic, right? So then here are the 4 things we currently use for remote contributor IP solutions that I want to go over. So SRT, Wowza and Haivision got together and basically created this great open source transport protocol. And we've been using it for 2 years. It's amazing. It has some advanced capabilities. We use it right now for a lot of clients. We also heavily use vMix Call. If you've never used vMix, I highly recommend it. It's a really great program. If you use OBS, vMix is that step up from OBS, and it gets you into like really cool stuff with vMix Call. SRT is built into it, which is really awesome. And it's got other cool flavors. Skype. So we still have Skype TXs. Funny little story. Anthony's going to laugh about this, but I literally took our Skype quad box out before the crisis. And I looked at my staff and I said, hey, can we repurpose this as a Wowza streaming engine? And then it was so funny because it was sitting on the desk, and I'll talk about, you know, there are transport issues with all 4 of these, right? And Zoom being the last one is really good for a lot of reasons. I love Zoom. I thought Zoom is amazing for a lot of reasons. So all 4 of these we use. The funny story about Skype is we ended up bringing it back because Skype is really good at network congestion. It's also good at getting through firewalls. It's also good when you have government and representatives who can't get through a firewall. Really, really helpful. So all 4 of these have kind of their own reason why we use them. And there's no one size fits all. And then I want to just point out, we have a blog. We've posted these 2 PDFs. One is about quick guide to video calls. Like, hey, you've got a CEO. One of my, see the laptop on the books, people? Laptop on the books is the greatest thing. How many times you see somebody and they're like this in MSNBC? It's like so annoying. It's like, come on, just put your laptop on a book. Like get me some eye level. So we have these PDFs you can download. That's a little plug for us. My team did a good job of getting this ready for everybody. And then on the right, you see how to set up Chrome, the Chrome settings, and how to do your webcasting. So here's WebRTC using vMix Call. And Anthony's going to point out that I have a space between web and RTC. I forgot to fix that. So sorry about that, Anthony. So video call, right? Here I have Fubo TV, Fubo Sports Network. They're taking in a guest into our studio. So what's nice about WebRTC using vMix Call is you can send someone a link, a low latency WebRTC link that they can view. And so it's very similar to the Skype experience, but it's fast. And you know, the biggest problem with vMix Call is that it's not efficiently wrapped on the transport side. So if you do have network issues, we fall back to other things. But vMix Call is really great for director cams. We're going to talk about that in a second. It's good for so much stuff. But the contributors' webcam, microphone, speakers are activated. The feed's brought into a switcher. We use Production Bot here to do SDI baseband back into our switcher. And then SRT. So I talked about this in the Haivision webinar last week. Little plug for that. This is my preferred workflow. It's an advanced workflow, but SRT we do for the US Open. It's secure. It's higher quality generally. It really is good at network congestion. The biggest issue with SRT right now is that there's no desktop app for iOS and for Apple and Windows, which we're trying to solve. And there's a couple apps out there. There's the Lyrics Broadcaster for Android that's really good. And then there's the Haivision Play Pro app for mobile. So, there's not one size fits all kind of service, kind of like vMix has for SRT. So it's a little bit harder to use, but it's really good. It's low latency. What I love about SRT is that you sacrifice reliability for latency. So not reliability, you sacrifice the quality of the encode, the quality of the stream for the latency. So you get to have like a nice trade-off. We ship a device to the contributor's location, and then we bring it back to our facility. And what's cool about SRT is you can time it within one frame, which is pretty awesome. There's not anything else out there like that. Don't talk to me about wrist right now because nobody knows. And WebRTC versus SRT, another plug for us. We have a YouTube channel on Live X. I really appreciate Wowza letting me have this opportunity to advertise all of our content. But we have a demo where I do a comparison. By the way, the audio on this demo, I'm ashamed of it, but the video itself, it's really good. And it shows on the right is me flapping my arms to show you how good the encoder is, because that's how much of a nerd I am. But check that out. It's really been very popular. A lot of people can see 9 megs versus 6 megs versus, like, you can really kind of see what the trade-offs are.
Yeah.
Can I chime in for a second and ask a question or two? So you mentioned vMix as kind of like your preferred solution of choice in this space. We have someone asking why vMix and not Wirecast or something else.
Well, there's a couple other things. So that's a great question. So we love vMix. We've been using it. It's very advanced. I like Wirecast. I've never really been a huge fan of it personally. A lot of this is personal preference, so I'm not hating on anybody's software. Except for sometimes I hate on well, I'm not going to say that. Sometimes I hate on Anthony's software, but that's only when it's in beta mode. So no, I'm not hating it. So the answer is Livestream Studio is really good. They have an interview feature. I know Wirecast has an interview feature too, I believe. I don't know what it's called. We use a system called ProductionBot. Productionbot.net, you can get it. It's like built like a tank, and basically it runs vMix, and then it has Aja Corbett cards, and then we go baseband into our switcher. I know someone asked, do we take the vMix call into SDI, and we do. We either take it into a switcher or we take it right into vMix and run it like that.
Yeah, though something I've heard from people talking about just different software, Wirecast, OBS, vMix. Wirecast, I think, has maybe an easier UX for folks, so it can be helpful depending on the level of skill set on your staff. One good thing that I've noticed for folks that are using Wirecast is offloading the encoding to an encoder and just using it for production will save you a lot of headaches, because oftentimes you might run into just overpowering the machine that you install it on. So that's a good helpful thing. And then isn't there also an OS factor at play here, Corey?
Yes, yeah, there is. So Wirecast, people like Wirecast because it works on Apple, whereas vMix is built specifically for PC. Another thing that I wanted to say that you had brought up that's a really good point is the OS, but the encoding. If you're using a TriCaster, vMix, whatever you're using, if you can offload, to what Anthony's saying, if you can offload the processing to it of the encode, if you can send baseband or NDI or whatever your flavor is into the encoder, it's always better. When I was at livestream.com, we made a TriCaster plugin, and it was awesome. It worked really well, but it when the encode takes up some of your bandwidth and your processing and your GPU, sometimes it doesn't allow you to use that for all the other cool features like vMix call. Somebody else had a question about vMix call. vMix has licenses based on how many calls you can have. So the highest license allows you to have 8 vMix calls, and then the lowest I think is 2. I think there's a free version where you get 2. So there is a free version right now, and now I sound like I work for vMix, so I'm going to shut up.
The one other thing I'd call out too with this WebRTC versus SRT contribution. So you talked about how SRT is going to give you a little better, higher quality, and part of the reason, some people bash WebRTC because it's like, oh, browser-based type encoding, it's not going to be any good, but you can actually get some pretty high bit rates on browsers. You are camera dependent in terms of what you're going to encode to for resolution wise. But WebRTC doesn't do things like B-frames in terms of trying to get a really high quality encoding out. Whereas within SRT, you can put different, your rich quality, high-end encoding output into SRT and transport it to your, back to your MCR where you're doing production.
You were the one that actually kind of opened my eye. I actually figured out it's the B-frames thing. And I was talking to my staff about that. The B-frames thing is legit because they've sacrificed the GOP structure and they don't have B-frames. I was always wondering why WebRTC to me I've always been like, well, wait, that's not as great a quality. And
Yeah.
that you were the one that
I
helped
mean,
me
it's
realize
the
that.
real time is the reason for it. You know, to do a really good, you know, encode, you do need to take up a couple hundreds of milliseconds to do look ahead and really get the best quality out. And so if you're trying to do a two-way conversation, WebRTC says, not going to do that. We're going to do as best as we can with real time. And it does a good job. It can do higher qualities. There's even some, you know, way futuristic type implementations trying to do like an AV1 over WebRTC. I mean, this is not now, but it's going to be doing cool stuff in the future too.
Well, and
Just
somebody asked, just one quick, somebody asked, does vmix call is WebRTC? That is correct. vmix does allow you to do 2 SRT transports. And so it does have SRT inside of it. So there are 2 different technologies inside that you can, there's multiple technologies, but it is in vmix. Go ahead, Amara.
Yeah, a couple quick hit questions before we continue. One is just around configuration. Are you going from vmix call to SDI into your mixer?
Yeah, so sometimes, so for instance, like when I show you Axios, we're bringing everything into vmix and then we're switching and doing graphics and then sending the program out to the encoder. So we're not actually going baseband. When we have multiple vmix calls where we have 8 calls, a lot of times what I like to do is I like to have one box that just runs the calls and then sends out 2 basebands so that I can set up the callers, right? So like, you know, you'll have one person talking to me and then another person talking to the host. So you have this kind of like host co-host thing and you set them up with the other box. In that case, I'll go baseband. But again, I think this kind of makes you realize like the reason I brought up the 4 contribution feeds is that there's so many variables based on your scope and
Right.
based on network conditions and based on kind of the gear you have.
Right. Another quick question, actually, it might be more for me and Anthony, but someone was asking about elaborating more on OBS compared to vmix for small live productions. I think, Corey, based on what you just said, it's very, very similar answer here. It's going to depend on, you know, what are you trying to do? What are you comfortable with? Personal preference, as you alluded to earlier. I know for me personally, working on a MacBook Pro, I've really liked OBS for going out to Twitch, YouTube Live, having those connections where, again, it's a very small production as far as it's just me on a single workstation. My workstation is working really hard, but I can do it. It just depends on how small your live production is and what is involved, how many cameras, what kind of feeds you're getting in. Will these tools work for you or not?
Yeah, and I'll throw out a couple other things. You know, on the spectrum of how you could run an event, I've seen a lot more of what I call pseudo live, so VOD is live within kind of the COVID time that we're in. So you're a small house of worship, like to go live with the remote production, like this is going to get a little complicated. Maybe we actually record something up front. You can edit, you know, a few different things together, and then boom, you do it. VOD is live. And I think users have even gotten a little familiar with it as YouTube and Facebook have premieres now. But this allows you to, you know, with Wowza, you could do that, send it to your websites. So that VOD is live aspect. And then I've seen more people just doing like a personal video broadcast. So they're basically just using WebRTC and going out. You could be potentially just using a webcam going into an encoder going out. There's potential with like a Clearcaster to throw a lower third or a bug on that. So you do have some options for like a really simplified rundown based on your tech limitations. And then as you really want to, you know, get something that's going to be, you know, more of a production, then you have these other options available to you.
Yep. And OBS, to Amara's point, OBS is amazing. Not hating on OBS in any way, shape, or form. It's totally amazing. We use it a lot because OBS will come out with stuff first. Like they had an SRT integration on Mac before anybody. So, you know, it's a great tool to start off on. The one thing I'll say for people that are used to switching versus using a computer switcher like vMix or Wirecast or OBS is they're more layer-based paradigm versus an ME paradigm, a mix effects paradigm. So an FPGA card card, like a switcher or hardware switcher is going to have an FPGA card. It's just going to be a circuit board. It's going to be more a layered mix effect. What's great about computer switcher programs is you can do unlimited layering. Well, technically, unlimited layering, and it's more like Photoshop. I always tell people, like, when you think about a live switching software program, think more like Photoshop or After Effects with layering live. And that will help you get over the hump. Because for me, I'm in this weird age range where I used to switch on switchers. I still do. We still use ATEM. We still use switchers. But when I had to move to the TriCaster paradigm and the vMix paradigm, it took me a second to get over that hump.
So I'm seeing some questions coming in that I know we're going to answer as we move through the agenda. So I'm going to say let's move forward. Let's keep going, Corey.
Okay, cool. So this is a first ever debut of our MVP, baby. Live X making C++ applications. I can't believe it. I cannot believe this. This is myself today. This is our this is our MVP of our new SRT. We're calling it Rivet because a rivet joins people together. It's weird, but nobody's using it, so we like it.
It's with a D at the end?
No, rivet, like a bolt, like
okay.
RIVET. I didn't want to put it up here because I knew people would start stealing it. So I'm like, no. So this is going to be for Mac, MacBooks, and or Apple devices, and also PC, Windows. And then eventually we'll port over to Android and iPhone and iOS. So just want to shout out, this is happening. We're going to have a beta. Anybody that's interested in a beta, please email Anthony at wowza.com, and then he'll get to me and he'll let you know.
I'm glad we got to break your news for you on this webinar. A question for you, because this is macro. Like, I see a lot of, really great production services companies ending up getting into the development world. Like on the Wowza side, we have folks that are using our APIs and building really cool solutions on top of it. Like, describe why that ends up happening for a company like yourself to go into and embark on like being a builder and building these kind of solutions.
You know what it was for me? When I left Livestream, so we had a development team at Livestream, and full disclosure, Livestream used a lot of engine, like initial Livestream. Most streaming companies use a lot of engine. Mike T, remember Mike T? Mike T came to my office and he showed me how to take my security cameras. I have two Times Square. There, you can go to timesquareball.net and you can see them right now. There's Times Square Camera 1 and Times Square Camera 2, and that is 24/7 pass through Wowza Cloud. And once I used that was like what, 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Once I used that, it was on like Donkey Kong. I was like, all right, well, I want to build a platform on Wowza Cloud. I want to do this, and so I've always been that guy, but now I'm going to sound like I work for you guys. It's fairly simple. When you get in the weeds on some of the GitHubs, it can be kind of crazy. And sometimes I have to like relearn what I have to figure out. And we're going to talk about a really cool use case that Anthony and that Wowza has been working on, and we kind of pushed. It's really cool. But it's just fun. And you know what? It's better for your client when you own all the pieces. I think that's why production companies like it, because you can own all the pieces, and I don't have to like call support and be like, hey, why is this thing messed up? It's like, I've made my own APIs, I've built my own structure, and I know when it's going to fail and when it's not. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, cool.
All right. So then these are some current live shows we support. So again, this is part of us being an essential service. Axios. Yesterday we did a live show. Monday we did a live show. We have a Thursday playback show, excuse me. Anthony, to your point, probably 80% of our business is VOD playback, where we record live. So we're doing Columbia University commencements, and we record a lot of those as live, and then we play them back with other live content. Here's a CGI. This was really cool. I had my door open, and all of a sudden I heard, "Hello, Mr. President." And then I heard, "Hello, Mr. Governor." And I was like, oh man, this is sweet. And so you can see like Gavin Newsom talking to former President Bill Clinton. And then these are 7 of our hyperdecks recording all the feeds, giving Blackmagic a little shout out there. And then this last Saturday, this was Show Me Your Walk. You know, some celebrities, Kevin Hart, and it was for Chase. They're doing a bigger event where they're kind of like, it's to help people who are graduating. It's just to kind of have positive messaging towards graduation. And then this is something we utilize SRT with. This was a Lysol RB internal meeting. I love this slide on the bottom on the left, because it's like they were still selling Lysol back in the Spanish flu. So it's like kind of interesting in that case. We made the graphics for all this, so we can utilize graphics. We have that internally in-house. And then questions on that. And before we move into Clearcaster, I'm sure you guys have some stuff.
Most of the questions that we're seeing come in right now, I think we're going to hold for the end. Like I said, there's some too that are kind of leading into the other agenda topics.
Cool.
So yeah,
I'd love I'd love your layout in the last slide, the bottom left one. I just feel like whenever there's either, you know, industry or macro changes, there's usually innovation in terms of how you portray things. Like I've seen a lot of cool stuff with how people do vertical video and multi-headed conversations. Like CNN was doing really cool stuff with Anderson Cooper in terms of how they were doing layouts for that. But I think even with like COVID and us all having people in different rooms where they used to be like on the same stage, you have to play with how you want to lay things out on the screen in terms of getting all these elements in place to make it really engaging.
Well, and that's a great point, because somebody was like, they want to do 11 people on screen, and so many people are used to Zoom, right? And I'm like, with a switcher, how the hell what's an 11 box look like? You know, it's like CNN has a 6 box, right? I've seen 5 by 5 and then a little, but I mean, at some point you don't have like it's a Zoom box, right? And I guess somebody was asking how we get Zoom into how we use production bots to do everything. So I literally open the production bot, I open the browser, I open Zoom up, and then I export it off the Corvid card. You could also do it, by the way, if you have like a souped up PC, which I highly recommend everybody, all you esports people, build your own PCs. You can do it for like $2 or $3 grand with a capture card from Blackmagic. Put the capture card in there, run vMix, and then you could also run your Zooms, and you can go out the capture card of your Zoom into your switcher. It just works really great. The hardest part that I found that is the annoying part is doing the busing back to the guest. So where you get into IFB and comms, which we're not going to talk about this webinar, but that's kind of the hard part. Are we moving on now? We're moving on.
Yeah,
now,
let's
right?
keep moving.
Okay. So encoding with Clearcaster. All right. So we have 2 Clearcasters, primary and backup, at our REMI 1, our MCR, our REMI 2, and then we also have a special Clearcaster for our multi-view low latency we just put in. Love Clearcaster. We've been using it since it came out. There's actually a case study on Wowza about us using it. It's really awesome. It's got a lot of, you can actually deep dive into the scripting. So recently, here's a picture. You can see the Clearcaster on the right, on the left, sorry. There's a production bot. So honestly, this is Warner Play On Fest. This is our MCR. You'll see we're social distancing. We actually sanitize the stations after everybody's using it. You can see in my rack on the top right, you'll see a primary and backup Clearcaster. That's actually running the feed. What I want to show you on the left, that Clearcaster, that's an encoder. What I was saying, how you need to offload your encoding from your switching, we do that all the time. So we'll have an encoder. Now, I'm practicing bad practice because I'm always a primary backup type person. So if you see the primary backup on the right, that's actually streaming primary and backup to YouTube at the same time. And then here is the stream that we did. So it was 72-hour playback. We had 2 network area storage devices into 2 production bots, and we synced them. So every time we played a new concert, so we'd play let's say we played Ed Sheeran, right? We would play a 45-minute Ed Sheeran, but we would time our switcher so that the secondary playback was on a separate NOS. So we had redundancy. And the social distancing thing, like, it's real, people. Like, social distance. Everyone wears masks here now when they're working together, sanitized workstations between operator shifts. It's a PIA, but it's something we got to do, and we just got to, as an industry, we're going to have to move towards that.
The one thing that I'd add about just Clearcaster and some of the times that we're we're in. So I feel like there's more and more need for the remote control capabilities of the Clearcaster. So you can install a Clearcaster, you know, in your head end, your news organization, you have kind of feeds coming in, whether it be like the White House pool press briefing type feed, or maybe another one, you know, a remote producer or reporter, excuse me. And you can actually take things live, add an overlay to it, and publish it out, you know, syndicate it out as, you know, the social producer, and not be in the building, because you can enable this kind of remote control capability within the Clearcaster Manager. And so that's a really affordable kind of you know, use case right now when you potentially can't go in, or you know, you need to do more things remote. So
Well, and as
just
you
another.
get more, to Anthony's point, so for instance, there was recently an update because of some drivers. We were able to deploy our updates remotely. So we actually have two producers. One is in Long Island, one is in New Jersey. They haven't come in the office in 45 days. They actually run one of our fitness shows, our Cheesehead Trivia show, and they actually help keep the facility up to date remotely. So to Anthony's point, we were talking in the rehearsal yesterday. What I really want production people, because we're trying to move so fast, you need to separate the production and how you do remotes from remotely virtualizing the production. I think if you separate those two, because what we first learned when we did this was that we just rushed into like, okay, we can do everything remote. You're going to take the clear comms and you're going to take the production bots and then we were like, oh my God, one operator is trying to operate what used to take 6 operators. And so divvying up the workflow and getting the comms right is half the battle. And I know somebody talked about our comms workflow, and any questions you have, I'll be happy to answer them. We can talk about the comm thing on the back end. I'll go to the multi-view thing now, if you guys are ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I've been pushing Anthony for this forever, and he finally listened to me. So this is amazing. So this is a very niche use case, but it utilizes Wowza. Hey, back to Wowza. All right. So you can see Anthony made this diagram. This is about the multi-view of your performance. So right now we have ABC, we have other clients, and they'll have directors or producers that are outside of, you know, they're working remotely. And so, you know, we can send a Zoom feed of program or of the multi-view, that's fine. But as you guys know, when, you know, Zoom is not very good for video playback, right? Of one thing it's really not good for. So what this allows us to do by using Engine, so we're basically using a Clearcaster with ultra low latency, a low latency setting. We're putting our program multi-view from our ATEM or from our vMix into the Clearcaster, and then we're sending it out to Engine. And then Anthony can talk about how we pull down the WebRTC for the viewer.
Yeah, so the Wowza streaming engine is in Ohio. The Clearcaster's in New York City with Corey. And what we've done is we've tuned Wowza streaming engine to also operate in the latency mode. And Wowza streaming engine has inbound ingress and egress, so it can take in WebRTC or, you know, other protocols, and then it could also, you know, repackage those to go out. And so what we're doing is we're repackaging the feed from the encoder into WebRTC to enable a real-time viewing experience for all of us who are remote from Corey. So Justin's in Colorado, Amara's in Texas, I'm in Virginia. We're all seeing that multi-view in WebRTC in a sub-second, you know, real-time view of what Corey's seeing in front of him.
And here is this morning, we did a test. We're actually running it right now. If we get crazy, you can see on the left. Okay, so on the right is the viewing experience on a separate internet network. On the left is the actual multi-view we're spitting out with the time, and you can see that we're about 1 second, sub 1 second, with the multi-view. And so again, this allows remote directors and producers to see a multi-view in almost real time, so they can cut off of that. We can create a page in our platform that's password protected, which I really love, because a lot of this content we don't want anybody to be able to see. And it's a lot higher quality than anything you're going to get out there. It's probably, honestly, Anthony, I mean, as far as use case, it's one of the highest quality, low latency type experiences you could provide today in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it will stay real time too. So the way that we're transporting this, you know, even how we get up to a second, you know, it's going from production bot to Clearcaster to the transport to Ohio. That's taken up some, you know, hundreds of milliseconds. and then going back to New York City, in this case, to the computer there some more time. But it's a real time, and it's also going over UDP, so it's not going to have lag, which I think if you watch, HTTP video, you're probably attuned to like, oh, if I have something on for 2 hours, I'm going to end up being like, 3 minutes behind because the segments kind of slowly build up on each other. Whereas with this kind of WebRTC output, the viewer's always going to maintain real time because of how it natively is going to handle packets and video coming over the network.
It's awesome. I'm really geeked about it. I know it's I know it's a very uber niche thing, but I think a lot of production people, they understand the value of this, especially in this current crisis. What's really funny is my developers laughed at me when I sent them the GitHub repository, and they were like, dude, I sent this to you last year and you were like, oh, we don't need this right now. And I was like, oh, man, I need it now. Now I need it like tonight. So we'll have this deployed basically, tomorrow. Do you want to show your screen or no? We're not doing that.
Sure, we can show it for a second to prove people it works.
Okay, let me stop.
I would call
share.
out in terms of, if you're using WebRTC, so this is something that we support in Wowza Streaming Engine to help do this use case. We actually have it in Wowza Streaming Cloud as an ingest, and we're going to add it as an egress, so for a playback capability in the future too. And, just to confirm with everybody, you can kind of see, here's Corey's multi-viewer that's in front of him across the way. So we can see, all the channels that he has going right now. And this is hitting my computer screen that I'm sharing with you. So you can have this easily just be next to a person as a return feed. Again, kind of expanding your production room to the world.
It's cool. I love it. All right, hold on. Give me a second. I got to share my stuffies.
Yeah, and we have questions that are kind of all over the place. So I'm trying to look through and see what we should cover now. One, I guess another one for Corey is, how is that remotely virtualizing the production happening? Is it VPNs, port forwarding? Is that something that you could answer now?
Yeah, so it's a mix of stuff. It depends on it depends on what we're using. So for the SRT stuff, for some of our broadcast clients, we're actually having a computer inside and using VPNs to go back and forth, so we're secure. There are some clients that we're using Chrome Remote Desktop back to us. There are some clients where we're using TeamViewer and we're just trying to make it happen. I love Chrome Remote Desktop. The other thing is vMix has this web UI we built, that they built. Sorry, we did not build it, but you can actually programmatic certain macros. So you can actually run off the web if you can tie in. So what we've done is we've have vMix boxes available on our 1 gig network for our producers to take over, and then they basically book the resource. So Anthony likes to laugh at me because I say we are the cloud, because we basically are on-prem. We have a ton of servers on-prem, right? And so we have a mix of things that we allow people to log in with. VPN is preferred though.
Cool. I think another question too, I don't know if we're going to cover it. I know at one point it was in our agenda, but someone just made a comment that, comms is huge and they were looking forward to having you explain that. Did we get that back into the agenda? Are we going to cover it, or did we axe that?
No, we axed it, but it's because I wanted to focus on this.
Right?
It's huge, you guys. So full disclosure, we use ClearComm. We're a ClearComm dealer. We love ClearComm. We use the Agent IC app from ClearComm for all remotes. We also have we have Dante as part of our workflow. So a lot of the ways we're getting audio in and out of our facility is in and out of ClearComm Dante, and then to Agent IC apps or to panels. We also have started to use Unity. So if you're like, dude, I can't afford a freaking comms matrix, please look at Unity. It's Mac based. It's really freaking cool. We're actually doing some cool workflows. What Unity does that I haven't seen a lot of people do is, yes, you can get the apps, you can deploy comms, you can deploy EC2 instances of Unity, you can do the licensing, and you can also do Unity Connect. So you can connect like a DAW, you can connect a digital audio workstation to another remote like like musician, and you can time audio. So it's like 64 channels on Unity Connect. It's really cool. That's more of Unity Connect. I've seen people using it, and I've used it for like 7 years. I know they use it for the US Open for some stuff. We use ClearCom for comms. Also, in vMix, one of the cool things about vMix is that you can do busing on the channels. So you can actually decide to send program back when you're using WebRTC, you can send program and other channels of audio that are in vMix back to the vMix caller. So that's kind of a, like, if you're wondering why should I use vMix, that's a really good reason, because they have this audio busing. And I actually just saw this really cool GitHub that one of our producers showed me, and it's a little matrix box that helps you in vMix. It's like a macro for vMix to do IFB and comms in vMix. It's pretty cool. So those are kind of 3 ways.
Yeah. There's a number of questions too coming in about failover and backups. And I think we could probably spend like a whole webinar series on those topics. So if we can cover some of those questions, I'm going to save them until the end. But again, it is another one of those like really meaty topics that maybe, a 2-minute answer here isn't really going to justify.
Here's my 2-minute answer. Buy 2 of everything.
There you go. That's not a 2-minute answer.
Full redundancy over partial redundancy is always better. It's where do you live on the spectrum of your redundancy needs? Are you doing 2 power supplies, 2 encoders, 2 internet connections, to 2 ingest points, etc.?
Yes.
Full redundancy is going to way to do it. Partial
also
redundancy.
Don't forget the player too. The player.
Yeah, partial redundancy. You have a bottleneck in one of those spots, and then the, worst case option, but still better than nothing, like having a hot spare ready. You have a backup encoder that at least has the program settings to light it up. So
Yep.
where do you live on the spectrum? Probably aligns to how much money you're investing in trying to get the job done and how much you're earning for it. But one of those 3 options is probably where you at least start.
For me, if you're live streaming, if something's worth buying 1 of, it's worth buying 2. And I know that's hard because, ATEM Constellation is $9,000, and I just recently bought another one. But it's a pain it's a PIA, right? But Clearcaster, like if you're going to buy a Clearcaster, you should probably buy 2. And I know I just made Anthony a lot of money, so let's move on to the next topic. Okay, Zoom hacks. Yeah, baby, Zoom hacks. I know you're waiting for this.
There were questions about it. People want to know,
Oh,
what are you
man,
doing with Zoom?
I love Zoom. I love Zoom. I love Zoom, and it's useful for a lot of things. Here's the thing. We convinced 2 clients to stop using Zoom and to use Skype, and we've convinced other clients to stop using Skype and use Zoom. So again, all kinds of variables. It really depends on what you're doing. So you see me in this this is our podcast room for Cheesehead TV. It's the largest Packer fan website in the world. Shout out to my Cheeseheads. So we did a draft show. It had 20,000 views. I can prove it because you can see kind of in that bad text on this slide. So this is a vMix. So here's what's cool about this. You're seeing a host who's in Long Island. Charlie Barron's on the right. He's in Wisconsin. Emery's in Alabama. This is just a 2-box show. And what's crazy is the person who's producing this was in Long Island. So it's one of our producers. So this is a classic. This is vMix, right? Nothing special. So then what we did is, as an input source into vMix, we did a Patreon subscriber exclusive and Cheesehead TV writer. So you can see my moronic self, like in the, I've got a little high and away, and then I've got this camera. And so I was running as an input source into vMix, the Zoom, which was really cool because you could do spotlight view. See how I have you can do the little grid view. I was playing around with it. It was fun. You can pin people. But what was really cool is that allowed us to get players. So the guy on the top left, he's the starting guard. The guy on the bottom left, he's starting center. The guy on the bottom right, he played for the Detroit Lions and Packers. He's retired, but he came on. The guy on the top right, Will Blackman, was a receiver. So they came on, and the Patreons were going crazy. They're like, oh my God, you got players on, and we're watching the draft. It was amazing second screen experience. We're still getting emails. Literally an hour ago, I got an email from someone in Germany that was just amazing. I felt like I was sitting in my living room hanging out with my people, and it was good stuff. So here is the benefit of using Zoom as an input source. So you'll see, I'm a little bit drunk here in this clip, but this is the benefit of using Zoom as an input source and not allowing Zoom to be your only output. All right, we're just gonna watch this real quick. You'll see me talking. I'm annoying everyone. You'll see the guy on the bottom left is really annoyed. He's like the host of the thing. I'm like saying, oh, you should take a receiver. I'm like being annoying. Yeah. And then they're like, stop. Nope, we cut you off. So again, like that's a great reason to use Zoom. Use anything, all this remote stuff. It's a lot better to use it as an input source because you'll get more overall control of the experience.
Yeah, I think it's such a small thing to call out, but it makes such a huge difference in terms of what you can control or add to your video stream. A lot of people are asking us about Zoom, or you also just hear a lot of questions about like, oh, I just want to take my Zoom and publish it to, Facebook or my website, etc. But putting it as an input source, you can really change up how you're, creating the content. So it's awesome.
Well, and you guys have a great Zoom integration. We're using it right now, right? Yep. We are not. So if you guys trust me a little bit more than my cheeseheads trust me to not screw this up. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Do you have any last comments before we really flip it over to just pure Q&A? Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or as we've had this conversation going, is there anything else that comes to mind that you wanted to let folks know about?
Well, I was going to say about the Zoom hack, something I didn't have time to put in our slides is Condé Nast has the Bon Appetit last
Test
Friday.
kitchen,
We did, Test Kitchen. I know everybody's a fan, except I'm a huge fan. Friday, we did a live stream that had 50,000 concurrents, and literally, if you watch it, you can go on YouTube and watch it. I was going to post it. It's all Zoom, because there were so many people coming in and out. And so some of the cool other things that we're doing is using Zoom rooms and using Zoom meetings to bring people in and out of feeds, because as this crisis is unfolding, people, if you can't use Zoom, I mean, I was on this Microsoft Teams meeting like yesterday, and it was so funny because like it was the classic like old man can't get in the Microsoft Teams, can't get his microphone working. And it's like, it's so funny how everyone can use Zoom. So remember that you can use that to your benefit, right? You can use that, utilize that. And it's so, what's really funny to me is when this crisis started, I poo-pooed Zoom. I was like, it's a web conferencing. And now so many of our solutions revolve around it. And maybe it's not like the production itself, but it's the producer meeting room, it's the staff meeting room, it's the green room, right? So, think outside the box that way. It's a pretty cheap account, and now I sound like I worked for them. So
like, how many companies do you work for after this call is over? Like 5, 6?
Yeah, I'm ready for my checks. Roll them in.
Nice. So looking at a number of questions that we have here, again, they're kind of all over the place. So we'll try to tackle them in some sort of order. We may not cover them all. But one of the questions that kind of goes to what we were just talking about was around a software recommendation for 5-day virtual conference with 20 speakers in a row. I think, Corey, this keys in on something that you just said, where if you have a number of speakers coming in and out, what are they using today? Are they using Zoom? Are they using something else? And what are they most comfortable with? And then you running the production, what are you most comfortable with?
So it's a great question. So we're doing this Know It conference on a Live X platform that utilizes Wowza Cloud. And they're going to have 3 Wowza Cloud. Basically, we're doing 3 streams, and then we're making a microsite that has their keynote and then their 2 rooms. And so what we're doing is we're using a Zoom as a staging room, but then we're bringing them in either SRT, Skype, or vMix call, or Zoom, if that's the only thing. We bring them in. So the idea is it's like a conference, and each speaker is going to speak at a certain time. So we stage them in the Zoom, then we bring them into the production environment, and then we bring them into vMix or the switcher, make sure all their audio is good, see their slides, okay, they're done. But then the one-to-many piece is done by Wowza Cloud. And so, there's kind of 4 pieces to that.
It's actually a great segue into another question I found here is, what's the difference between using Wowza Cloud and YouTube streaming? I get this a lot from developers who are trying to figure out what what pieces and what components are they trying to use to make these solutions happen. And then sometimes, it's kind of frantic. You're glossing over things. You're trying to figure out what works with my solution stack and what works the fastest. So this is probably a question for both Anthony and Corey. What really is the difference, and how do you coach people, or how do you coach new employees through understanding the difference between not just Wowza Cloud or Wowza Streaming Cloud and YouTube TV, but other options as well?
Well, I like to say, YouTube, the social platforms, and they're trying to get your content out to the world, right? And there's a lot of instances though where you might have content that either needs low latency, it needs special advanced features. I remember when I worked at livestream.com and I would look at YouTube and I'd be like, why would anyone use live stream over YouTube? And then I was like, well, the tools and the fact that you can gate, and the fact that you can have a registration gate, and the fact that I can add password protection, and the fact that I have better looks into my ingest and what my users are doing. You might be a fitness company and you need to see all the pieces from where your stream's going to all the way to Fastly or the CDN, and you need to see all that stuff because you need QoS and you need other things. So I tend to say that, like, if you need an embed, if you have a small number of users, if you have a donation need, if you have a pay need, there's some kind of advanced integration that you need to do. You need to use cloud. A lot of people want a platform, a white label platform, in addition to their social platforms. Anthony?
Yeah, so, I would unpack it in this way. Sometimes your content is about getting as many eyeballs as possible, and that is the only purpose of the content. And typically those use cases, you're just throwing it onto social. And where Wowza comes into play is helping you hit social en masse, meaning like YouTube, multiple YouTube pages, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and multiple pages on each. Then we can help with syndication, re-encoding in the cloud to hit the right bit rates and the right resolutions, etc. But really those social platforms are solving that number one job for you, which is like as many eyeballs as possible, full stop. As soon as you start to add in other elements to that, meaning you're trying to collect payments for something, or you're trying to auth who the users are, or ensure they're watching and tracking that somehow, or doing different things around content engagement that you can't do on those platforms, getting it into your mobile apps, those types of things. Again, as soon as that starts to become more than just, oh, I just want anyone and whomever to as many eyeballs, that's when you start looking at companies like Wowza and the solutions that we could provide to really help facilitate that end goal of what you're trying to do with your streaming.
So another question, what do you need in your workflow to facilitate SRT as the transmission for video callers in terms of the network you are using?
So you need to be able to, your ports, your firewall, you need to have that piece worked out. How we work around it, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll send a laptop as the at-home contribution that'll be running vMix. And because I know what that laptop's IP is, because I can remote into it, I can work around those issues. Also, there's a thing called SRT Gateway, which we're building with our app, where you can actually have two callers go to the gateway instead of a call listen model. There is an SRT deployment that Haivision has. Haivision has 3 white papers on SRT. I don't care if you're not a nerd, you should really read them if you're going to do SRT deployment, because really, it's funny. I remember having this conversation with Anthony, like, I don't know, 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, well, you don't have SRT. He's like, well, what do you want? It's like, there's like 2 pages on it. Like, what do you want in this thing? It's like caller, listen, rendezvous. Once you kind of understand what those are, you basically use the variable that you're in. So if you know your firewall, you know your port data, you probably just set your hardware or your vMix or OBS on a listener mode and then have people call into it. That tends to be the easiest way. But if you have to get through a firewall on the other side, then use the gateway. And it's pretty simple. You can spin up an EC2 instance of an SRT gateway, and that will allow you to kind of bypass that.
Yeah. And the one other thing I'd add about SRT in terms of like a major benefit is as soon as you maybe start to have to conquer distance, SRT becomes this incredible advantage to really do that well. You simply can't go intercontinent type video transport without using an SRT or I guess an SRT alternative technology and do that well. So that is another thing just to keep in mind in terms of the real use cases when you really need to use SRT. It's a great one. It's going to solve it, and it's going to do a good job.
And it's really solves, I said this in the High Vision webinar, but I saw network congestion issues happen, and I saw everything of our stuff pretty much fail except for my one SRT feed coming from Green Bay. So it really does prove itself out in real world conditions. I know there's going to be people in the future that are going to argue wrist versus SRT. I don't care. I'll use wrist too, but you know, it's like I used everything. I'm an everything kind of person. I'm a best of breed type of person. I know that's really annoying for a lot of people because most people in life just want like, you know, one kind of hot dog and one kind of hamburger, but you know, I like them all.
So just like two more questions before we wrap up for today. One thing I wanted to make sure that I asked was the people want to know, Corey, what is that link to the vMix GitHub application that you keep talking about?
I gotta find that.
Yeah.
Let me find that real quick while you guys are. Oh yeah. Give me another one.
Totally good. The next question, I think something that we've covered in blogs. I'm not sure if we've done it in a webinar yet, but how does the Wowza integration work with Zoom? Anthony, I don't know if you want to kind of talk through that and what's going on there.
So with Zoom, you can just get a output that's RTMP. And so Wowza will be able to take that output and be able to re-encode it, create multiple renditions, or syndicate it out. So in terms of an integration, it's just using that custom RTMP capability. You can then use cloud technologies to really scale that RTMP to hit a bunch of viewers.
I just sent, so it's a vMix audio matrix in GitHub repository. I just sent it to all the panelists. Justin, if you want to send that out. We have no, okay, full disclosure, we haven't tested it yet because we're fully in production. I saw it 2 days ago, so please do not come back on me if it's like, if it like pings Ukrainian Russians or something crazy.
Corey at livex.tv is how you can file a complaint and he'll fix the repo for you.
Oh my goodness. I think, let's see, I'm trying to look for a good juicy question to end on, but maybe it'll be a little bit less juicy. I see a number of questions coming in about, you know, other Wowza products that we didn't touch on in this webinar. We're not going to answer those today. I guess because Corey, you mentioned you're big into best of breed type things. There's somebody asking, is there any go-to hardware encoder suggestions? It sounds like you run a number of different things, so that might be more than just one at this point.
Yeah, I mean, well, Clearcaster, and now Clearcaster has SRT, and it has some other flavors. It's pretty awesome. We love Makitos from High Vision for SRT. We do have a bunch, and I just today on now High Vision's gonna owe me a check. I just bought an MB chassis, which is 21 cards, dual decodes it can take. It's crazy. So you can actually do 42 decodes in one chassis. It's insane. And then they're coming out with the X4 decoder. So they came out with the Makito X4 encoder, but they're coming out with that next month. So actually in this chassis, you could have, I can't count and I can't do math, so I'm really sorry, but you can do 21 times 4, 84. You can do 84 decodes in one chassis. But and we also love vMix with Production Bot, but my go-to encoder is really Clearcaster. My go-to decoder encoder solution for SRT is Makitos, and then anything else like Instagram hacks, any kind of weird like GitHub repository type streaming approaches, we pretty much use vMix as like our like test encoder.
All right. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you to everyone who attended. We really appreciate all of the questions and thank you for, you know, asking them throughout the session. It really makes this a little bit more interactive for, I'm sure you as an attendee, but for also us as speakers. It makes us feel like we're not alone. So thank you everyone. A special thanks to Corey. Keep up the good work there in Manhattan and keep all the live streams running for us.